morning and welcome to another episode of Unstoppable Overcomers. And I'm your host, Dorothy O'Dell, for this evening. I just want to give a huge thank you to our guest today. Her name is Jill Schultz, and welcome to the show, Jill.
Thank you. How are you?
I'm cold here in Windsor, Ontario. What about you?
Well, don't laugh, but I'm cold too in San Diego. It's
Lord.
been raining cats and dogs today. Like they gave out a weather warning, don't leave your house. Like it's been raining. And last week it was, or the week before it was in the high 30s. So I mean it gets cold here too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing. I know. I'm sure you're like negative 1 million.
We were at -7 this morning, and my friend is in Punta Cana or somewhere around there, and he says drinking lattes and getting ready for a morning of cribbage, hoping it's not too hot here. I'm like, dude, at home it's -7, so shut your mouth.
Yeah. I know.
But enough of that. No complaining about the weather.
Right.
It is what it is. I'm a Canadian. Not that I had no choice but to be born here. But that doesn't mean I have to stay here forever. I need to convince my husband we need to leave. So with that though, Jill, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, I already know I live in San Diego. I am a serial entrepreneur. So I have 4 businesses right now. I have an event business that I've had for 24 years. I'm in the wine industry, which everybody always loves to talk about wine. So I love that. And then I do vacation rentals. And my newest business is around my book that I have just written. So really stepping out and sharing my story with the world so that I can collapse time for other people and let them know that they're not alone.
I love that. That's the whole purpose of us starting this this podcast, was because we wanted to make sure that people were never alone when they're going through those moments. So could you share a little bit about your overcoming story?
Yes. I always like to start by saying this is a story that people are not talking about. So if this is your story and you're hearing it and remembering for the first time, or you're being triggered to remember again, I have a lot of resources on my website. I always want people to be safe when we're having these conversations because it's a very triggering topic. And so thank you. You just put that up there, jilleschultz.com. There's a resources section, and then there's a section that says get help. And those are all anonymous. I believe they're all anonymous resources that you can reach out and talk to somebody. So I'm so grateful for the Me Too movement, because I feel like even though it's a tragic conversation to have, those brave people who started talking about the sexual harassment that that was happening to them paved a way for us to talk about this more easily today than ever before. And that's how my story started out. I started out being hurt when I was around 3 or 4 years old. I don't remember who did it. It doesn't matter. I have forgiven that person a long time ago. And, that's one of the main things when you're healing, is to forgive whoever hurt you, not for them, but for you, because it helps you get along in the healing process. But where my story turns, and even though nobody's talking about this is way more common than you can even imagine. And so if you're finally, like, oh God, this is my story, I want you to know that I see you and I honor you, and you get to heal, you get to love yourself, and you get to forgive yourself. But when I was probably around 7 years old, I started innocently and curiously experimenting with other children because of what somebody taught me to do when I was little. And the debilitating shame that I lived with for 41 years, thinking that I was the only little girl who ever did anything like that, was overwhelming. And so the reason that I'm sharing my story now is because God told me I get to share my story now. Because trust me, this is not something that I would have picked to be like, I'd like to be the poster child for little kids who act out. But I really want people to know that you're not alone. It's quite common, and we get to normalize this conversation so that people really can get deep healing, because there's so much shame attached to this. So, I really, really talk about shame. And, everybody has a secret. And so even if your secret is not around sexual trauma, you get to get that out in the light. You get to heal from it, and you get to live a beautiful life. So that's me in a nutshell.
I love how you said when God tells you to do it, do it. That's exactly how my book was read or wrote, and that's exactly why this was, these shows have gone on. It's funny because I would never have done this. Like, where would I have gotten this idea,
Yeah.
right? And so I love that you were willing and obedient to what He had you say.
God always wins. So, you can fight and fight and fight and fight. And God and I fight a lot. We literally, we have verbal fights. And, it was just about surrendering and really knowing that whatever gets to get created out of this gets to be beautiful. And it took a couple of years for me to get to that place. But yeah, the longer that you fight it, like I'm telling you right now, God's going to win. So surrender and just release, and beautiful things can happen.
I'm writing that down actually, because it's funny because I've been having this back and forth conversation with God myself the last couple of weeks and saying, no, I don't want to do this. No. And then, just as a reminder, of course, God always wins. And of course, what He wants for us is always bigger and better than what we have, set it out in our minds to be, right? Yeah. And so I love that you said that, be an obedient, willing steward, to be able to share. And yeah, absolutely. Excuse me. And I'm sorry that happened to you, especially at such a young age. It's you're right. People don't talk about that because people don't want to talk about that. It's like I've said before, we talk about things that are taboo because taboo just doesn't do. And it's a lot of people pass judgment and things like that, but people don't really have any clue. Unless you've experienced things like that, you really have no clue.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you for sharing that and getting, people to talk about that. And so from, what made you decide to be an entrepreneur?
Oh, I had no choice in that one. I am a terrible employee. You tell me what to do, I will do the opposite. And I don't intentionally do it. It's just innately in my soul. So when I was in my 20s, I used to cocktail and bartend as I was putting myself through college. And I knew at a very young age that it was going to be a problem because I would just do the opposite. So I started my first business when I was 33 years old. And every day I wake up blissfully grateful that I get to be my own boss. I can't imagine sitting at a cubicle, and not if this is what you do and you love it, no judgment. For me, I can't imagine sitting in a cubicle. I usually sleep until about 8:30 every day. Can you imagine doing that with a corporate job? Like you got to be in the office at 8, So I knew from a very young age that it was really not a choice. I needed to be self-employed. Yeah.
It's funny that you said that because I'm, when God nudges you and gets you very uncomfortable and, the point where you're ready to explode and every little thing that is, it's just like digging because he's forcing you out of your comfort zone, right? You get that what I'm talking about.
Yes.
That has been me for the last 2 years. I do work in a cubicle during the day, and it's just like, so I took this one test, and the one test said that is the one thing I should never have done. Definitely being an entrepreneur. And it's funny because I get what you're saying, because at such a young age, I've had multiple different businesses. So I get you. And in my book, I actually, I wrote this one thing in there. I've always wanted to tell HR I have anal glaucoma.
Okay.
Just can't see my ass coming into work today. Now, I've never used that line. I have never used that line. But before I retire from corporate America, I will use it. And that will
I
probably be the day that I get fired.
that is hysterical. I have never heard that term before. I
Oh,
love it.
really?
Yes.
I don't know. My mom actually gave that to me years ago. So shout out to my mom. Her name's Dorothy too. And,
Dorothy
and
squared.
Dorothy squared, yes. And so it's just comical. And you know, and people that have actually bought the book, and no one has said anything to me about that.
What's the name of your book?
The Overcomer Facing Challenges with Faith and Courage.
Okay, I love it.
Yeah, so it's just as I sit here, I'm just like, okay, girl, when are you going to be able to use that? Thank you.
Yep.
You sparked that back in me, Jill. So thank
Okay.
you.
Life is short, man. And if you're talking about moving and, life is too short to not be happy. So come to San Diego and start your business.
Well, that's the thing. Yes. Well, I've started it the last couple of years. We've been slowly starting it, and this is definitely the year of takeoff. And I need to retire myself and my husband from corporate America and be vagabonds. I guess I don't know. Have a house in San Diego and a house here in Canada.
There you go. Yep. Dream big.
Yes. And so you said you have a wine business. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So I work for a French company. We're Franco-American. So we have wineries in Burgundy and in California. And there's 25 different beautiful, iconic wineries that I get to represent. And it's open to anybody. So if you want to start a wine business, JillESchultz.com, you can reach out to me. It's just, it's really fun. Wine is sexy. So everybody wants to talk about wine when you tell them that you have a wine business. I used to sell Mary Kay. I got quite the opposite reaction. So I'm glad that I'm in a space where people like to have those conversations because it's so fun. And my wines, they're miraculous. They're so beautiful. Like the collection is really, truly an incredible collection. So I'm glad that I have a beautiful product that I get to work with too.
Right.
Yeah.
It's always important doing the stuff that you love. Because if you don't do what you love, then you learn to resent it for sure.
Yeah.
And so it says here, so what is your book about?
My book is Liberated, Releasing the Dark Cloud of Shame. Oh, you can't see it with the and it's my story of overcoming the shame that I lived with for 41 years, being a child that acted out like that. So it's actually a compilation of stories. I wrote 2 chapters in it, and then the other chapters God beautifully curated, and it's other people who either had similar stories to mine, or there's stories of healing, people that were hurt by other people, and the how they did step out and forgive. My therapist wrote a chapter in the book talking about how to talk to children so that they're not targets, or if your child is hurt, what to do to get them help. And then the last half of the book, I hope, is more inspirational for people. It's really stories of people who have gone through a lot of trauma and have come out on the other side and just manifested beautiful lives for themselves. So when people pick up the book, I tell them each chapter is not based on the other. And it is a very hard read. Like, it is down and dirty. And so if you're reading one of the chapters and it's too much for you, put it down, read a different chapter, go to the end of the book. I never want anybody to be in a place of trauma when they're reading this, but it was 100% God. It's so funny too, because I've been getting some statistics on the book, and we are a best-selling author in 6 different categories. Wow. And I look at this book, and I was talking to my dad, and I'm like, I'm so removed from the book. Like, I really feel like I have no attachment to it. And my dad said, honey, that's because you didn't write the book. God did. And I was like, totally.
Shout out to dads. Aren't they amazing?
My dad, both my parents are miraculous people. Yeah.
I love that. Yes. So then And motivational speaker. So are you speaking about the same topics or?
That's what I'm looking to do. Yeah, I'm really manifesting that right now, getting on stages. And I want to inspire people. I want people to know that even if you've had it hard at the beginning of your life, you can come out on the other side and have a beautiful, beautiful life. So that's the next chapter.
Perfect. It's funny because we all say like life is like a book. What is the next chapter going to be,
Yeah.
right? And anybody that's out there that has never written your own book, what are you waiting for? Because, like I said, everybody has a story,
Yeah.
and your story is just waiting to be heard by somebody.
Yeah.
So
Somebody's going to resonate with it, and your story could save somebody's life.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's the one thing that I've learned in sharing with different people. Like I do a lot with veterans. And so on a Friday, there was this one particular veteran that was just really struggling. He had just lost his 10-year-old son to cancer.
Mhm.
And he was just like, please, somebody tell me that they can relate, because I feel like I'm by myself. There's no hope in this situation. And I just want to find my purpose again.
Yeah.
And I got chills, and I took a gulp, and then I'm like, well, I sat beside my dad for 9 days and watching him die of cancer. So I totally get where you're coming from. It wasn't a child, and
Yeah.
I'm by no means taking that away from him.
Yeah.
I said, but I can relate on so many levels. So, and by the end of that conversation, it's just like, and he said, I have no more family left, and it's just me and my dog. I said, well, no, you don't, because the people on this call are your family. I
Yeah.
said, I don't know about them. I said, mine's kind of messed up. So, but you're more than welcome to come join us. I don't know. And I just said that jokingly, like my kind of normal. I don't know what is even normal nowadays. Like, I don't even know.
Yeah, I don't know. I certainly can't answer that question because I'm far from normal.
But that is the new normal.
Yeah.
So we think outside the box and things like that. So absolutely. Yeah. And so if somebody's out there right now going through the same thing that you have gone through, what would your number one piece of advice be to them?
I'm so glad you asked that. Um, for God, you need to talk about it. Like you get to get your story out of you. And I remember the first time that I went to therapy, I was 33 years old. I started my business and went to therapy in the same year. And I remember getting to the office and walking in the office. And for those of you who are listening right now, if this is your story, I know that you just have this knot in your stomach and it is overwhelming. And I felt that. And I'm like, how can I go in and tell this person what I had done? Because as a child, I thought of myself as a monster, acting out like that. And I can promise you, and over and over and over again, every time I tell my story now, and I've told my story probably over 200 times in the last year and a half, the level of love and understanding and kindness and compassion that I have on the other side of sharing blows me away. So you get to talk about this. Shame cannot live in the light. And so you get to start talking about it, and you get to get support, you get to get help, and you get to just getting it out of your body is the first thing, I would say, the biggest piece of advice. So find somebody that you trust. If you can find a therapist that you can talk to, call one of these resources on my website. Just find somebody that you can talk to. And maybe to start out, maybe it's writing it in a journal. Maybe you're looking in the mirror and saying it to yourself, like just anything to start the process of getting it out of your body.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I wrote that down. Shame can't live in the light.
Yeah.
And just
shed your shame, baby. Shed your shame.
Exactly. And and then we tend to hide. Like when we feel shame and when we feel anxiety and depression and things like that, we hide. So I love that you said that. Bring it out. Talk to somebody that you trust first. Right. And then get the help that you need to heal from carrying all that shame, guilt, and whatever for those years. And there's no shame getting help at 30. I think you said 35.
I was 33 the first time I went to therapy, and then I was healed. I was fixed. And then I went back at 41 because I was still suffering from bulimia. I was still had an eating disorder at 41 years old. And I'm like, you have got to get this. And this is all related to the sexual trauma. It's one of the side effects of sexual trauma. I'm like, you've got to get a handle on this. So I have had 3 therapists. And because every time I'm like, I'm fixed. And then it's like, oh God, there's that other onion, the other layer of that onion, Yeah. But yeah, there's never any shame. I mean, if you're 60, 50, 75, whatever age you are, it's never too old to start healing, because I lived in so much pain for so long, and you don't have to live like that. Mm-hmm. Everybody gets to live a beautiful life. Like, that's our birthright. We get to live a beautiful life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's there is no shame in getting the help needed. Totally 100%. There's a lot of stigma around that, and I get that, but those people that are casting judgment are the people that really need to find forgiveness in themselves. Yeah. I see that a lot, and I'm like, I just shake my head. I'm just like, you know what? If you've never been through any kind of trauma, you have no idea. And good for them, but for people that have gone through things, there's no shame in that.
And you have to get to the point where you decide to not live in victim anymore. There's so many people out there pointing their finger at somebody else. There's 3 fingers pointing back at you when you are blaming somebody else for what's going on. And that's why earlier we talked about forgiving. You have to forgive that person first, and then you get to acknowledge that it happened to you, and you get to move on. You don't get to continue to blame other people because we have a choice every single day. We get to choose what our life looks like every single day. I don't care what your situation is. You get to wake up and you get to decide, today is going to be a better day for me. I'm going to own this, and I'm going to heal from it. I'm going to learn from it, and I'm going to help other people, or whatever your situation is. But you have the ability to make that decision every single day.
Absolutely. And forgiving yourself is the number one thing. Forgiving other people, number one, but forgiving yourself. And like you said, forgiving yourself is one of the hardest things to do. And I get that. There's so many things that, we all do stupid stuff when we're younger, or put up with stuff that we're like, damn, why did we do that? Like, why did we put up with, I'm just thinking of like being in an abusive relationship for so long. And then you're like, well, why? You finally leave. And then you're like, well, why did I stay for so long? Right. Yeah. But it doesn't matter why you did. The thing of it is you got the help. You got the help that you needed. And it's time to forgive yourself and move on from any of those situations.
Yeah. Yeah. It took me a long time to realize that I was a little girl. When I, as a little girl experimenting with other children, I saw myself as an adult. And it was the second time that I went to therapy when I was dealing with my eating disorder. That was the first time I ever had any relief around how I felt about myself, because I had the therapist say to me, he's like, who do you know that's 12 years old? And I thought of my niece, and he's like, do you think your niece reasons like an adult? Do you think she acts like an adult? Do you think she can, rationalize like an adult? And it was the first time that I was like, oh my God, I was a little girl. And it was the first time I ever felt any sort of relief around all that shame. And I'm 41 years old when this is happening. I've lived with this for how many years? I don't do math. 12 to 41. You do the math. But to live with that debilitating shame for so long, it was like this. And my book is called Releasing the Dark Cloud of Shame. It's like this. I had this shame cloud that followed me around everywhere I went. I would go to sleep, it would be there. I'd wake up, it was there. It was just looming. And I like to call it like Pigpen, where he's got the dust all around him. That's what it was like. It was just this oppressive shame cloud. And, when he said that to me, that's when the first little crack of light came through that cloud. It was like, oh my God, I was a little girl. Yeah.
And you said so much there. You're right. Like, who in their right mind at such a young age? Like, you would never put that kid in prisons. So, but you're putting yourself in that self in exiled prison.
Yeah.
With no parole, basically, right? And doing that at such a young age, it's no wonder why, it's decades of that, and then having an eating disorder, because everything is attached, right? If you start off with one thing, and then it's just things compile until you deal with it. And I like what you said, healing is like an onion. I've always said that, one layer at a time. You think you're, like you said, everything's healed, everything's nice, then you get triggered, and it's just like, well, no, I dealt with that. I just dealt with that. Like, why is it coming back?
Why?
I get you. Trust me. As somebody who has, like, repeatedly, dealt with the same situation, same trauma, same whatever. But once you finally get down to the core root,
Well, but that's why it's also important for you to be surrounded by people who, like, I've done a lot of transformational work. I did Landmark Education. If you know what Landmark is, I did this.
I did it too. Yeah.
You did Landmark? Yeah. I did Hardcore Leadership. I did their PhD program. So, right now, this book coming out, and like, this is hard. Like, God's asking me to do something that nobody else is doing right now. This is hard AF. Sorry. And so I have been blessed that I have a circle of people around me who have done transformational work. So I'm advice from grounded people who are, well, I can't say it any better than that. They're grounded. They've done the work too. And so I'm getting beautiful advice from people who have good advice to give. I'm not getting advice from, a best friend that really hasn't done the work or doesn't understand what support I need right now, So find different communities that you can get surrounded by people who are going to love you like that and support you like that. I believe in paying for coaching all day long. It's really important. If you're trying to get to the next level in any area of your life, you want to surround yourself with people who have done it, and have done it successfully. And so if you have the wherewithal and you have the means, by all means, pay for coaching. Otherwise, get on YouTube. There's so much stuff on YouTube. So much stuff on YouTube.
Absolutely. I love what you said. Community is everything. And before I got on here with you, I was just talking to somebody about, having a tribe of people around you. I call them my tribe. There's 7 of us that, we are there for each other no matter what. We are all in it to win it, and we're all in it to, get past the hurdles that are before us. And we've all dealt with different things in life, different traumas or different tribulations, let's say. And if one person doesn't know, somebody will, and if not, then we'll get help outside of the group. But having that support system is necessary. Somebody that is, like you said, that is not going to take information and run and things like that, but somebody who has been through, like you said, been through different things and been through the training to help get you through what you're going through.
Yeah. And I feel like I feel, I don't want to step on any toes here, but I feel like today there are so many other modalities for healing than what was available for me when I was younger. And I still have a therapist that I see every now and then. I don't see her as much. And I believe that there's a place for traditional therapy, but I also think some of these immersive leadership programs or intense, like, transformational work can help you get healing way more quickly than doing therapy for 15 years. Or, like, there's different types of hypnotherapy now. There's tapping. There's so many different ways that you can get into those memories and release them than was available to me before,
Exactly. And I don't know about you, but for instance, like, back when I was younger, I was bullied a lot in school, and I never shared that with my parents.
Mhm.
You know, when you were going through your trauma, did you share that with any, like your parents or anybody like that?
I didn't tell my parents until 6 years ago. I'm 56, so I was 50. Yep.
Yeah, and that seems to be like a common trend among kids that are, you know, have some kind of trauma. But what I can honestly say is by sharing, you know, because our parents have no idea. I don't know about you, but I was the queen at masking my emotions and masking everything. And
Absolutely.
they had no idea. Um, you know, oh, I come home grumpy. Oh, she's just having, you know, she's just having a moment. You know, they never thought that my parents were not the, like, they didn't deal with that stuff when they were growing up.
Well,
So why
nobody
would they
knew.
even think?
Nobody knew. Like there's no training manual at that time for people to understand how to deal with, I don't know what your situation was, but sexual trauma or any of that kind of stuff, Now this is why we're having this conversation, because we get to open the space for this so that, if your child has, sorry, I think I keep freezing. And it's probably this like this, not a good look. If your child is suffering from any of the, I don't want to say symptoms, but any of the after effects of trauma, and some of those are self-harming. So if your child is cutting, eating disorders, if your child knows too much about sex at a very, very young age, um, not having good boundaries with other people and other relationships, sexual promiscuity. If your child is experiencing any of these things, these are signs that something may have happened. I'm not saying something did happen. I'm saying these are signs that something may have happened. And the more that we're armed with knowing these things, now we can have these conversations. But nobody was talking about this 45 years ago. Nobody was having these conversations.
No, exactly. You know, we have evolved definitely since, you know, even we were children.
Yeah.
And now that these things are coming out, people are more aware, and, you know, now parents can, you know, see the different, how their child acts out and see that by acting out, wait a minute, there might be something going on here. So
Yeah.
just pay attention to, you know, what your child is doing, saying, acting, speaking, things like that. And having those hard conversations is much needed. I mean, as a parent, I can't imagine, you know, your kid opening up to you and like, what are they like, what do? They have no idea. You know, now they have this. But the thing of it is, it's okay. You just get your child help.
Yeah.
You know, there's lots of resources out there, lots of, like you said, go to Jill's website. She's got resources there. You know, depending, I am a life coach too, so depending on, you know, what the area is, I can get you some help as well. Or know people. I do a lot of networking, so if I can't help you,
Right.
other people can.
Yeah.
So just go to my website, which is unstoppableovercomers.com, and we'd be glad to help. Just send in a look at the stuff that we have there, and then we would definitely help you for sure.
I love my therapist. When he was helping me write the book, the chapter that he wrote, he's like, as parents, we have the birds and the bees conversation one time. How many times did you have to do multiplication problems? How many times did you have to do addition problem? How many times did you have to do that in order to have that be embedded into your body? We can't just have these conversations with our children one time. We have to have them over and over and over again, and have the conversation at the level of advancement your child is at that time. Obviously, you're not going to have a very advanced conversation with your child if he's 2 years old, but we need to be having these conversations on a regular basis in order to protect our children from being targets, having their boundaries, knowing that if somebody tries to touch you there, that's no, and you come to mommy. And it's not stranger danger, because unfortunately most I have to be very careful what I say, but a lot of times it isn't a stranger who is hurting your child. A lot of times it is somebody that's very close to you in the family. Statistically, that's just a fact. So to teach your child to say stranger danger does not land because it's not a stranger who's hurting them sometimes. So, that's kind of the hard truth of it.
I like that you said that. How many times do we do multiplication at school, but but you only have that conversation once.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I don't even think I've had the sex conversation with my parents.
But
And I'm
too late.
47.
It's never too late.
It's funny because as females we tend to get different things than guys do. Our period. Let's just put it out there. We'll call it what it is. I got it at my grandparents. I was at my grandparents, and I just asked to go home. And so my parents and my grandparents are like an hour away from each other, and I gets home. My mom goes, "Well, what's the problem?" So I tell her, and I'm like, "I don't know what happened. This started happening," and she's just like, "Oh." And my mom's mom said, "You didn't have the conversation with her?"
Oh my
Like,
God, you must have
seriously?
been terrified.
I was terrified, and I have no children, so I mean, I have a stepson, but that's my husband's job to talk to him about sex and all that stuff.
Right. I don't have kids
And
either.
I'm just like, that's your job.
Yeah.
And so I'm finding myself, okay, well, let's just say I helped raise my nephews, well, the one for sure. So I'm good. They're 20 some odd years old. He's grown up. He's gone. He's married. Now I don't have to worry.
You think he knows? You don't think now's appropriate for you to, hey.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah.
I don't need that worry. My children, it's funny because I did want children. It just never happened. And now I'm thinking that people that I help are like my children. So, the veteran community, it's just like, I'm like the mom bear,
Yeah.
how dare somebody do that to you? Let me get at them. No. So I don't think you need to have children to have that parental, wanting to have that parental guidance with somebody else. But anyways. Yeah. All right. So now we'll go to the fundamental section of the show. We'll have some fun with that. Kimberly, unfortunately, is not feeling well tonight, so she cannot join us. But she normally does this section of the show. So the fundamental. So it's capital FUN/duh, like hello, duh, and then mentals. And so what are the 3 things, Jill, that if you were to leave to planet Earth tomorrow that you would want people to remember you by?
Okay. Well, we talked about a couple of them here, but one of them, my favorite saying is by Neil Donald Walsh, and it's life happens outside your comfort zone. Look at the hardest thing in your life right now and face it. And, that's what I had to do to get to the healing that I was able to get to. That was that cloud that was over my head all the time, was just that shame. And if you can look at that one thing that is just looming over you and you can clean that up, life gets so fun. Like, can you imagine cleaning up a thing that has just been holding you back forever and ever and ever, and all of a sudden it's gone? It's like, now what do I do with myself? Now I have this blank canvas that I get to create my life from because I don't have this looming shame over me anymore. So that would definitely be one of them. I love that saying.
I love that. All right. So what's number 2?
Number 2 is what we talked about, that you get to talk about this. You get to talk about it, and shame cannot live in the light. So finding somebody that you can trust and know that they have your heart in their hand, it's so important. And whatever you've made up about what it's going to look like on the other side of telling somebody is a lie. A lie.
Okay. And number 3, what's your 3rd?
Number 3 is just really telling your shame, you don't own me anymore. You get to decide today to get past that. And we already talked about how shame can't live in the light. And it's so true. And so I just hope those things for everyone that's listening right now, because that really is the formula to getting to the place where you get to create a beautiful life. I love every morning I wake up and I have this little dance that God and I do. It's our little morning meditation that I get to do. And I'll wake up and I will immediately listen to something on manifesting or how to have a beautiful day or things like that. And then I get really quiet and I meditate for about 5 minutes and I just say, okay, what do I get to do today to push this forward? Because I mean, this book has been challenging. You know, there's been a lot of hiccups. And like I told you earlier, the last thing I would have chosen would be the poster child for this topic. So I just get really quiet and say, what do I get to do today? And then I hear spirit, Holy Spirit, my inner voice, whatever. And then that's the things that I tackle that day. And it could be something really simple. Like one time it was like autograph your books and send them out to the people who contributed, you know. Some days it's that. Some days it's work on your keynote. Some days it's, you know, work on your wine business. It's something different every day. And I also like to say, what does the world need from me today that I get to contribute? And wait for that answer too. I always think that's really fun.
I love that. What does the world need?
For me,
you know, and if more people did that, just amazing how much the world would be, right?
Yeah.
Love that. Well, thank you so much, Jill, for sharing your story today. And where can people get a copy of your book?
On Amazon and Barnes and Noble, or you can get it right off my website. Jilly Schultz, Buy the Book is there. If you do buy the book, please leave me a review. I would love that. And like I said, if you read something and it's hard, put it down, pick another chapter. I don't want people to be hurt. I want them to be inspired. I want them to know that they're not alone by reading this book.
I love that. And thank you so much for joining us here. Thank you so much for those of you that are listening and watching the show. Jill, is there any last words that you want to leave our guests with?
Oh gosh. Be brave, be courageous.
I love that. Be brave. I absolutely love that. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And I just want to remind everybody that definitely go take a look at our YouTube channel. And we're also on Roku now. So go check, actually it's been a year now. So go check us out over there. And we have Operation Hope going on right now, which is helping other people evolve. So that's with the coaching that we do here. So if there's people stuck out there, they have no idea, they're kind of confused and need clarity, getting to their next steps in life, then definitely go to www.unstoppableovercomers.com. And we will get you hooked up with that. And don't forget, guys, same time, same channel next week.